Origins of Graviton was a physicist named Franklin Hall, who was involved in an experiment in a private research facility in the Canadian Rockies. A mistake in Hall's calculations causes graviton particles to merge with his own molecules, and Hall later discovers that he can mentally control gravity. Franklin Hall was born far north in Alberta, Canada. He excelled at school his entire life, especially showing promise in the sciences. He eventually became a lead scientist, considered by many to be the most brilliant, at a small private physics research institute in the Canadian Rockies. During an experiment on particle acceleration, Hall attempted to align a particular set of graviton matrices and induce a teleportation effect. All he succeeded in doing, however, was overloading the power thresholds on his equipment. The resulting explosion destroyed Hall's equipment along with two neighboring particle accelerators. The mixture of these explosions resulted in an atomic flurry that intermingled Hall's molecules with subnuclear graviton particles, eventually granting him the power to mentally manipulate gravity. Franklin, at first, hid this power from the world. Thinking that outsiders would view him as a freak, he attempted his best to mask his immense superhuman ability. However, it wasn't long at all before his will broke and Hall was using his gravitational abilities to gain whatever he wanted. Much to his joy, people began to fear him, and being a man of drive and resource, he quickly fashioned himself an elaborate costume and took on the name Graviton. Taking complete control of the research lab he once worked for, Graviton began working to develop new ways to improve his vast power. Nothing went wrong until a former colleague of Hall's, a young man by the name of Joe, sent an emergency distress call to the Avengers. They quickly arrived on the scene, but by the time they had Graviton had lifted the entire facility several thousand feet from the ground and threatened to make an example of Joe by crushing his skeleton under his own body mass. The Avengers quickly fell to Graviton's immense abilities, leaving only Iron Man and Thor to do battle with him. They tricked Graviton into believing that his love interest had killed herself after discovering Hall's evil ways, and the resulting rage from Graviton forced the building in on itself. The entirety of the complex collapsed inward into a giant ball that Thor quickly hurled into the Hudson River. Graviton survived the ordeal, but was temporarily turned into a giant with black hole powers who battled the Thing and Black Bolt. After dispersing his excess mass, it took him quite some time to rebuild the city he now calls Sky Island. Graviton returned and held a department store full of people hostage by levitating it above a skyscraper, but he was again defeated by the Avengers and was exiled in space by Thor. Hall returned once again and tried to assemble all the criminals under his leadership, but his plot failed when he was stopped by the Avengers' West Coast. When Hall attacked the Avengers' mansion, Vision merged with him and Graviton was sent into another dimension, where he was revered as a god. He soon grew tired of the inhabitants' minute intelligence and wanted to leave to his own reality. So he built a beacon that may somehow be detected from the other side. The signal was picked up by Fixer, who was working for Baron Helmut Zemo. Fixer used a robotic version of the Hulk to bring back Graviton to his own reality, at the command of Zemo. When he returned, he battled the Thunderbolts and the Lightning Rods, Great Lakes Initiative, but was convinced by Moonstone that his power is worth nothing if he had no purpose. Graviton returned and battled the Thunderbolts, and with the help of Angel, he was defeated and returned back to the alternate dimension. Graviton re-enters Earth's dimension for one final time, and after battling the Avenger Iron Man, he decides to end his own life. More recently, he was shown to be a member of the Hood's crime syndicate, although the mysterious circumstances of his reappearance or anything further regarding his current status has yet to be revealed. Powers and abilities. Franklin Hall was a normal human until empowered by an explosion that intermingled his molecules with subnuclear graviton particles generated by a nearby particle generator, which gave him the ability to manipulate gravitons, the subatomic particles that carry the force of gravitational attraction, and anti-gravitons, similar particles but with opposite force and spin of gravitons. Graviton could surround any person or object, including himself, with gravitons or anti-gravitons, thereby increasing or decreasing the pull of gravity upon it. Hall was able to manipulate gravitons for various uses, including the projection of highly concussive blasts, formation of gravitational force fields, and levitation, and had also been proven capable of generating gravitational fields in various objects, making them attract any nearby matter, or individuals, not heavy enough or physically strong enough to resist. By decreasing the pull of gravity beneath him, he could fly at any speed or height at which he could still breathe. However, by using his force field generation capabilities, he could also breathe in space. By increasing the pull of gravity beneath his opponents, he could pin them to the ground, having made them too heavy to move, or cause sufficient gravitational stress to impair the normal functioning of the human cardiovascular system. He could also cause an inanimate object, such as a 1-foot, 0.30 m, diameter rock, to radiate enough gravitons to give it its own gravitational field, able to attract nearby matter and energy. By rapidly projecting gravitons in a cohesive beam, he could generate a force blast with a maximum concussive force equivalent to the primary shockwave of an explosion of 20,000 pounds of TNT. He could also create a gravitational force field around him capable of protecting him from any concussive force up to and including a small nuclear weapon. On a large-scale, Graviton could exert his gravitational control over a maximum distance of 2.36 miles, 3.80 kilometers, from his body. Thus, the maximum volume of matter he could influence at once is 6.88 cubic miles, 28.7 kilometers. He once exercised this control by lifting into the air an inverted conic frustum-shaped landmass whose uppermost area was 4 miles, 6.4 kilometers, across, and causing it to fly as though it were a blimp. He could also erect a gravitational force field of similar proportions. Graviton could formerly perform as many as 4 separate tasks simultaneously. He had not only lifted a 4-mile, 6.4 kilometers, wide land mass as high as cloud level above San Francisco, but at the same time he also surrounded himself with a force field, ascended on a small rock down and hurled some policemen and helicopter 10,000 miles, 16,000 kilometers, up into the orbit. Graviton could use his power at maximum capacity for up to 8 hours before mental fatigue significantly impaired his performance, and considerably longer, up to 18 hours, if he conserved his energy during that time. He was somehow also able to bestow the power of self-propelled flight to at least 70 people independent from his location. However, he was also able to take this power away with a thought. With time and training, his power further advanced as sustained application of his power, even to the extent of levitating an island miles above ground level, could continue while he sleeps. He was able to somewhat reshape mountains on the moon and demonstrated the ability to lift a small stone in China while residing in LA and deposit it in Australia through a victim's head just to see if he could so. By separating himself from Earth's gravitational field and instead attuning himself to the incredibly stronger gravitational field of the Sun, he was able to cross the distance from Earth to the Sun almost instantaneously, where his individual force field proved strong enough to withstand the forces of the Sun itself, effectively simulating long-range teleportation. To return from the Sun to Earth, he utilized the Sun's gravitational field as a form of slingshot device and was able to cross the distance to Earth within minutes. Hall's single most ambitious display of power was when he held almost every Marvel hero in stasis, including the whole Fantastic Four, some of the X-Men and such physical powerhouses as Thor, Hercules, the Hulk and Namor, and began using his powers to try reshaping the Earth in his image. He also had the ability to detect extra-dimensional shiftings and phased or invisible objects through his immediate awareness of gravitational shiftings, and while he was not able to invoke dimensional portals, he was at least able to close them. He could simulate vast superhuman strength and durability using gravitonic fields to surround his body, but he could not actually manipulate density or increase his physical strength. Aside from his powers to manipulate gravity, Hall had a PhD in physics and is intellectually brilliant, with expertise in advanced physics, including teleportation. His greatest limitation was that he was emotionally and mentally very disturbed.